Hey, we are live here with Clint Evans, behavior chef. I almost read that. And I was looking for the U in behavior for our British friends and Australian friends. I like to tease them about having that U in there for no reason. For no
Unnecessary
reason.
vowels.
Yes. But they invented the language, so whatever. We got habits playing. I thought that was appropriate for those of you not familiar with Cliff here. He's big on habit change, behavior chef, right? So we're going to talk
That's
about
right.
that, dive into it.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn that off so we don't get copyright sued and all that fun stuff. But tell us, Clint, where you are, what's going on. Tell us about behavior chef. Dive in. 3, 2, 1, go.
Fantastic. Hey, I'm Clint Evans. I am the founder and co-owner of Behavior Chef. We are myself and another gentleman named Tony Chambers. We are what's known as board certified behavior analysts. So we have master's degrees in something called applied behavior analysis, which is like a fancy term for like science and psychology meeting together to study behavior. And so we have board certifications in that. We're also precision nutrition coaches, and we're in St. Louis, Missouri, repping the Midwest a little bit out here, and we have a podcast ourselves, by the same name, Behavior Chef Podcast. But our entire thing is nutritional habit change, and so we get a lot of people that want to lose weight, and that's a generic term. A lot of folks, myself included. If it's cool, I'll give a little bit of my backstory of how I came to Behavior Chef, and so. I was about 4 years ago. I was 100 pounds heavier than I am now, and I had yo-yo dieted like most of my life. A lot like a lot of folks. I played sports in high school. I was pretty in shape. Then college hit, and Taco Bell was cheap, and the rest is history. And then when I got married, I like to consider it my happy weight. Our first couple years of marriage, I really ballooned, and I was 26 when I first started noticing things. I'm 32 now. So it's, better part of, or, better half of a decade, I guess, for all this to really come together. But I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, dude, you're 26 years old. You're pre-diabetic. You're pre-hypertensive. You're insert early death marker here. And not in such plain language, said basically, if you weren't so big, you'd have no problem. You're a healthy guy, other than your obesity markers. And so then I started we started doing classes for, this master's degree and ABA. And I started seeing these parallels between how like our personal environment, which is like our day-to-day life, how all that stuff fits in and manages our behavioral expectations without us really even knowing it. So our environment sets us up for success in the behaviors that we're looking to get out of life. And I started digging into that. And my wife and I, at the time we did this, we paid a company that did something similar. They weren't behavior analytic by any means, but we paid a company to help us, initially lose weight. As we're going through the process, I started connecting the dots, created the Behavior Chef kind of as like a fun outlet for social media for our little corner of the psychological science world, so we can kind of disseminate, because we're not, it's relatively new. BF Skinner came up as the father of the psychologist.
You're going way back.
Yeah. So we really started in the 60s, and kind of got together in the 80s and 90s, really getting going. So we primarily work with individuals that identify as autistic, or that have autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. And so we a lot of us work in clinical settings in schools. I full time I work in a school, building the Behavior Chef as a brand on the side, and being a father and a husband, and I minister at church as well. So I kind of have, I'm the typical ADHD adult. I have my hands in plenty of places. But all that experience for me had led to the idea that weight loss is really a symptom of a larger problem. Like for me, I wanted to lose 30 pounds. And then the question is, then what? What happens when we get there? And some studies that we cite, and some of the research that we use to create our stuff, because we're systematic, like we use science to do what we do. We use science to look at. So again, we look at the nutrition, but we also look at the science of habit, the science of behavior change, and we track that with data. We do it systematically. All those big, clinical words, but what it ends up coming out to is most people, the research suggests that 80% of those that lose a significant amount of weight will either put it back or overreach where they originally were within 12 to 15 months. And so actually there's another podcast in the fitness space known as Mind Pump, and they're like pretty big. And I've had the pleasure of having one of the guys on ours, and I have something coming up. We're working on something with another one of the guys, but Sal, the one of the main hosts, said one time,
Stefano, is that
yeah. He said one of these episodes I was listening to, he said, we don't have, America doesn't have a weight loss problem. We have a weight loss retention problem. Everybody can lose 10, 15 pounds, but it's keeping it off. That's the problem. And then you have this whole fitness influencer genre, that's all over Instagram and Facebook and all those things. And it's just like the new age version of telemarketing. And they talk about it all the time there. We talk about it on our podcast a lot too, that, there's a lot of draw into being good at social media. There's to be able to be like, hey, check out these washboard abs that I have. So here's buy my 6-week program and you'll look like me. And then you get the 6-week program and you're like, either A, you spent too much money on it, so you're discouraged. B, it's too behaviorally expensive, meaning like, it takes too much time, or I'm not conditioned at that level, or C, I do the 6-week program to the letter and I look nothing like what I thought. So I'm discouraged and I fall off my own wagon again. And then I'm right back where I was before. And of course, those are generalities. Obviously, it's not everybody, but that's what we see. The reality is it doesn't work.
Yeah. And I'll throw in the biggest example of that is The Biggest Loser, right? That, they showed that, again, you see these great success stories and people losing tons of weight. And then I think they've done all the follow-ups, and 95 to 98% of the weight has been regained, if not more, like exactly what you're talking about. And the one I'll throw in as well, are you familiar with E.C. Sinkowski and her thing, Optimized Nutrition? She's more in the CrossFit kind of space.
Oh, okay. I don't know her name so much, but the title of
Optimized Nutrition. So again, I'll give her the credit of this quote of basically, in terms of diets, is this something you can do for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way, if it's keto, if it's, all these fad diets that we're talking about here, intermittent fasting, everyone's jumping on that. And it's like, but is this something you can do the rest of your life? So I want to, push back to you. And Precision Nutrition, I'll also say real quick, I've been a big fan of theirs for a long time. I actually just got my level 1, finally went through the thing and got the test. Yeah. So
that's right. I think that's where we connected, actually, wasn't it? In one of the groups there.
Possibly. Yeah. I think somebody asked about podcasts and you threw yours in there, and I told that person, I was like, maybe you like this John Berardi one that, if you like
the one
nutrition.
That's connected to PN. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, man. So I want to jump back to you. And again, I really love the concept of values inventory that you kind of talk about. And I'd love for you to talk a little more about that process and a little definition of values inventory and how that rolls into this concept of how do we change things for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the passion, the heart of what we do is, I'll take you through like a typical client onboarding. So if I have you come in and you're like, I want to work with you guys, and you sign up, the very first thing we do, along with getting a macros breakdown of where you are currently, that looks at your, TDEE, your NEAT, or your goals, all that stuff, and puts it together through the science of nutrition and gives us a macro printout. A lot of nutrition coaching seems to stop there. Like, hey, just follow this plan and you're golden. But there's no how or, when or what to it. It's just do it. If you can't do it, then it's not good enough. If you can't do it, it's your fault. And that's nonsense. That shouldn't be how we coach. And one of the things we've connected to it through this psychological piece is as a values inventory. So I sent you that little graphic, and it's on our Instagram too. Sometime this week, I visualized the whole idea into a staircase. So the values or the purpose is what's getting us to the bottom of that specific staircase. Like there are, plenty of staircases in the building, if we want to use the analogy, right? There's plenty of ways to get up, plenty of staircases that take you to plenty of different floors, but I want to get to this specific floor for a specific reason. So the values inventory that we use, we have people go through and take, and it's a pretty lengthy thing. And that's the staircase of habit. That's on our Instagram as well. But so the value down there, we end up finding that by going through this values inventory, and it goes through things like what are the things that you value? For example, like for me, it is vulnerability and authenticity are the two values that I funnel everything I do through. That allows me to be myself. That allows me to operate in my best setting. And so when I'm looking at something, I'm trying to find a way that I can be vulnerable and authentic with that thing. And that makes it flexible. So it's not super rigid. So that I have freedom to go ahead and move around psychologically. I'm not stuck to one set of rules. And then there's the whole neuroplasticity side where we do something over and over and over again for a long period of time. And then it creates this rigid neural pathway that, our brain wants to fire and follow every time we do it.
So can I jump in real quick?
Please.
I've heard, and those listening, probably we've heard it from different guests and things like that. Based on your current understanding of the research and things like that, what is that number of, they say it takes 21 days to build a habit, and then people are like, well, actually it's like 62, but 21 is like more of a digestible term. Pardon the pun there, but yeah, is there a number or way you can synthesize the science of that for us with your background?
It's more so to answer the question. 21 days is the reason why it's digestible is because it's a long time frame of doing something consistently. Mm-hmm. That's really the magic number. There really isn't. I can't remember the gentleman's name now, but one of the leading researchers there was like, he talked about that too. 21 days to a new habit, or 21-day habit fix. All those types of things. And he said the reality is, through the CAT scans, they're able to run and do these tests and see. Long story short, I'll give you the quick science and then why the number doesn't matter so much. Because what ends up happening, what they're able to see is that your brain fires a specific way when you think about a specific thing. And so they introduce a new thought to go ahead and retrain, if you will. Think of it like a detour. There's construction, and then we have to go around to get to the same way. And so we have to practice the new way over and over again so they can see it firing and all that stuff. And it's difficult to do at first. It's like learning a new skill. It's hard, like learning a guitar is foreign to most people. But when you learn a couple of chords and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, the whole thing opens up. Your brain is really, getting that neural pathway built. So the 21-day idea is really more of like, where for 21 days, I am fixated on doing this skill over and over and over and over and over and over again. So it's not as if I wake up on the 22nd day and I have a new skill. It's that literally thousands of times for the last 3 weeks, I have focused on this thing daily. I've made it what we call salient. I've made it known to me. I've made it a priority to practice over and over again. And in your mind, you can do that. If you've ever had anxious thoughts, you can think about the same thing thousands of times throughout a day. And so, we practice it innumerable amounts of times. And by the time we've done 3 weeks, relatively, that's thousands of times that we've most likely, I think they said somewhere between, it's like around the 800 to 1,000 mark is really the times that it takes is the average I think they found. And I'd have to look at the research to make sure that I'm completely correct, but it was pretty high. It was way up there. But that 21-day idea is that, 3 weeks, we can go ahead and think on it a lot. And by that time, most people had a new neural pathway built.
It's not Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours. That's like becoming an expert on it, right? But
yeah, that's that deep view.
Yeah. But coming back to the values, if we can go there for a second, I'd love to give the listener a more kind of concrete maybe way to look at that, where again, I've played around with this. I don't know if you're familiar with OPEX, James Fitzgerald, again, in that kind of CrossFit space. That's a lot of where my background is, but sure. they do a lot of unique stuff, I would say. And they've always had values as a big indicator of that. So again, when we start with a new client and the way they did it, they would initially have you kind of put down your value. So again, you have a 5-month-old. So maybe your 5-month-old is your number one value, right? People want to say that. And then, your relationship, your marriage, your family, your connection to God, your connection to your fitness, whatever it is, your business, all these different things. So however that all lines up, you have your values kind of ranked. And then there's a couple other questions the way they do it anyway. And I'm curious if this is something kind of how you guys do it, or if there's a place for this of, well, where do you actually spend your time? And like you go through this questionnaire of like 15 different questions. How is your room set up? Where are you spending your money? All these things. And then you say, hey, like based on the way you answered all these questions, that doesn't really line up. And it's okay if your child is not your number one value. Doesn't mean you love them any less. It's just, it's kind of having that conversation so that to say like, right now work is your number one thing. You might
Yep.
put it 7th on the list, but it really is where you spend the most time, where you're doing all these different resources. So yeah, again, is there some kind of connection to that? The one other caveat I'll say to that real quick, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it with your background of when someone says, you mentioned like, I want to lose 30 pounds, then what? But yeah, it's kind of that concept of again, 5 whys. So it's like, well, why do you want to lose that? Why not 35? Why not 25? Why 30? Why is that the magic number? And then you get down to the heart of it by continuing to ask that why of like, well, I actually want to meet my partner. I want to be alive for my 5-month-old and be able to, be at their wedding 30 years from now or
Yes.
whatever. So that why, getting to that why is really the root cause of that behavior change and saying, oh, like I have something that I need to change. So yeah, sorry, I went on a little ramble there, but
No, you're good. That's fantastic stuff. You're exactly right in the idea that the 5 whys, I know that's a popularized way to look at it, where we get down to we niche down more and more and more until we really hit bedrock. And so I call it more symptom checking. So the 30-pound weight loss is a symptom of something we think that we need to do. One of the questions we ask at the beginning is this goal your idea? Was this something that you've come up with, or do you feel that there's a societal pressure to do it? Whatever, like why we get to the why. So the values inventory will do the same thing, and it ranks you in like, the oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like streetlight style, red, yellow, green. So the idea is like green is, so you may rank it this way, kind of like what you're talking about, but green is really where we're seeing you spend more of your time. Yellow is, it could use a little bit of work, and then red really needs some attention. So we try to take a couple of the green and then attach it to 1 or 2 of the red, kind of put these holistic view of a value together. So when we create this arena, this context of a value, and so let's say work is a high priority for me, but I said family. And so there's a disconnect from what's really valuable to me than what I thought was valuable to me. And so in the center there becomes that goal of 30 pounds. And we've sussed out that really the goal, like my personal values align with my, values inventory, to where family is a big value to me. And so, like I said earlier, I've made some changes to my work and everything like that to make that value happen. So that value of vulnerability, for me, being vulnerable with myself, allows me to set the boundaries with my work, so that way I can live out the value of my family. See, it kind of all works together. But that value of family ends up being what we call an outcome. So we set this massive outcome, like, hey, I want to be, let's say, I want to be around for my child's wedding, or I want to be, and sometimes it's a little more concrete than that. Like, I want to run a marathon, or I want to do couch. It's kind of like the couch to 5K thing. Like, I want to do something with my family. Next year, we're going on this trip. I want to be able to walk around Europe, and, I can't really do 5,000 steps a day without getting out of breath. I want to be able to, you're going to walk more than that in Europe. So what we'll do is take the values, rearrange them, get this outcome. And then in the middle of those 2 things, we'll create the goals. So one of the goals will be 30 pounds, but we're going to break that goal down even smaller. We're going to meet where we are currently with that values driven piece, and we're going to look at our macros. We're going to set, small incremental goals to attempt that, 0.5 pound to 1 pound weight loss a week. So, and then we start diving into the behaviors around all of that. So we have the structure set up. We have the values, we have the outcome, we have the goals to get us there. Those goals, they increase as we go. But this is where the systematic science piece comes in. We use those macros as the nutritional markers. And then we have something that we're developing, we're calling the behavioral wellness continuum. And it goes along with that values piece, where it's like 7 dimensions really of like so we have your macros covered, and we have your outcome covered. How about your sleep, your movement, your environment, your social life, all that stuff? Yeah. And so all that stuff is a part of that. As we're going through the macros piece, we're also going to begin working on these other goals when the environment allows for it. So when I get a little bit more momentum in my macros, and I don't need to talk. And I notice this in not only in the data, but the conversations with my clients. The first few weeks, we always spend time diving into what a carb is, unlearning that carbs are bad, and learning that carbs can be good. And basically, food has no morality. We don't do diets. We do flexibility. We do mindfulness approaches, so that this week I was a little heavy on steps. So, my carbs were up and it balanced out. Next week, I'm not going to be moving as much. So I'm going to try to rearrange that with maybe some healthy fats, a little bit more veggies. Like it's that teaching. And so as we go through all that and get it together, and then we start looking at, cooking is actually one of the areas we look at. For example, I get this question all the time. How do you eat at home? Like if we want to replace a behavior with like a behavior we want to change, we want to replace it with something new. My favorite example is like fast food burgers. A lot of people love to swing through and grab that and grab the Diet Coke and say, well, I did, at least I got the Diet Coke. And that's, that is neither here nor there. But my thing is always like, okay, here's the rule at home. If the value is driving the bus and we really want to hit this goal and you really want that burger, hit Google and go ahead and type in macro friendly 5-ingredient burger. So my stipulations for myself, if I want something, I need to find a macro friendly recipe with 5 to 10 ingredients that I can do in 45 minutes or less, because that gives me clear, concise, and complete information. It's clear what I want to do. It's concise on the amount of ingredients I have, and it's a complete idea of a meal. So that way it doesn't take me too long. It's not behaviorally too expensive, meaning it's not too hard to do. I don't have to give up halfway through. And I still get that thing I wanted, but now I've learned a new skill along the way. So I'm empowering myself even more. I went a bit of a ramble there too. Sorry, but that's
okay.
That's a look at how we kind of do our thing. And I think that's what makes us a bit unique. I'm biased, of course.
Yeah.
But
well, I love it because it actually totally, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to ask you on here, is it totally overlaps and lines up with my kind of concept of 5 pillars of health, which is, like you said, movement. That's the primary one for me with my background around physical.
Mm-hmm.
I got my physical therapy shirt on.
That's right.
In the right light here.
I got my old that we took the out like last year, so it's just Behavior Chef.
There you go.
And we kind of cleaned up the logo, but I got my old polo on just for you.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, first of all, and but I don't get to wear polos too often anymore. But yeah, I have a whole collection of them from my school days. This is circa like 2006, I would say.
Nice.
So it's retro. So, but yes, 5 pillars of health. So movement for me is that kind of top one with my background. But then yes, eating, sleeping, recovery is the third one.
Yes,
that you kind of mentioned. And then mindset and connection are my 4th and 5th. So mindset is the one that, again, we really overlap with. And you threw that into our kind of pre-interview questionnaire to make it sound real fancy. And you talked about the mindset shift with language and how we talk to ourselves and the importance of that. I'd love to hear more about that. And again, for me, the really easy one and the one that comes up a lot is changing things like I have to go pick my kid up from school versus I get to go pick my kid up from school, and just changing that language. But yeah, I'll let you, rock and roll with that concept.
You're exactly right. It's that simple. But the thing is, even myself, for the longest time, I thought, well, that just sounds kind of dumb, right? It sounds like I'm placating, I don't know, to myself, or it's like some psychobabble mumbo jumbo. At least I grew up in a very macho-esque household, which, I mean, I'm a big guy and I'm a strong guy, but I'm not macho by any means. I'm a pretty, I know I'm in my feelings. You can call me Drake if you want to, whatever, but I know, I like to feel things. And so I was like, that didn't align with my values. Being the hard and tough guy, like when I see my son who's now about to be 6 months old, he smiles at me every time he sees me. At this point, I know that's going to change, but in that moment, I get to stay in that moment and just really appreciate the fact that there's this little human that relies on me for everything, but just loves the fact that I exist. And to me, that's one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. And everything revolves around that. That doesn't mean that I sacrifice everything to be with him. I still have my values. I still get to do this. Like my wife gets to do some of the things that we have our values driven, but it's in, it aligns. And so all of that comes back to how we talk to ourselves. I did a post the other day, just kind of a reminder, like we do throughout the week, we kind of do these reminder posts. And one of them was like, when someone that that you love and trust, like your wife or your spouse or your best friend, whatever, when they really mess up and let you down, or if they mess up and they're down on themselves, you're there to support them, right? Maybe like, hey man, you hear your wife do that negative talk. Maybe I don't feel like I look good today.
Do you listen in on our conversations? Is that what?
I was in the house. Yeah. I have it bugged right now. But it's it's just because that's a typical conversation where we're like, man, I just look terrible, and you're like, no, you look, don't be so hard on yourself. You'll get him next time. You'll do. And then the post said, you're kind and supportive and empathetic with your friends and family. Why not try that with you?
Mm-hmm.
And the concept there is this phrase that B.F. Skinner actually said, and it's a kind of a paraphrase, but he said that there are no wrong answers. There are only learning opportunities. And so it's a mindset shift of looking at, like, I always used to tell myself that I am so dumb. I am stupid. I'm not worth anything. No one's going to want to listen to you, Clint, because you're nobody. And that still might be true. I don't really care about that anymore. I have a message that helped me, and I've seen it help others, and I want others to know about it, regardless of my imposter syndrome. More, it's FOMO more than imposter syndrome now, which is good. I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to give this message. And there's another gentleman named Stephen Hayes, and he came up with this concept, he and his team, called acceptance and commitment therapy. And within ACT, that's the acronym for it. Within ACT, there's this key concept known as the dictator within. And it's this voice. Everyone has one. We have this internal voice that tells us all the negative things about us. But in reality, it's a disconnect from you psychologically. It's not actually you. It's a voice that lives in your head, to put it in plain language. And a lot of the times we spend so much time focusing on either replacing a thought or running away from a thought or powering through it. When the psychological flexibility piece of the mindset shift, the real genius of it is allowing that thing just to exist and to know that it's there, that it doesn't have power, but it just exists. Like, my previous learning history gives me negativity in the way that I think about myself. And this is where the values come in, because we really hone in looking at, so I'll give you an example of how this all ties in. I've been able to see with, our pre-questionnaires and things like that, someone's learning history might be, I'm going to go generics here. Let's say someone has a learning history with yo-yo dieting and, either some sort of binge restrict pattern. And usually if we why down, if you why down to why that happens, there's typically, it's a stress response, right? So I get stressed, I reach for chips. I notice that I reach for chips, I feel terrible about myself, and then I overdo it, and then I restrict because I overdid it, and I need to get back on track. That seems to be the yo-yo dieting circle. But I would see this with clients sometimes. So then instead of saying what happened, I would dive in and say, tell me about Wednesday, right? Monday and Tuesday were good. Wednesday, I saw us go over on carbs by 200 grams, which is a decent chunk for a specific person. Friday, I saw us eat hardly anything. And then Saturday and Sunday, we went ham. You still tracked everything. So thank you for that. But let's dive into what happened Wednesday. Well, I find out that Wednesday, our nemesis from work was there, and they've done this thing that, they got the promotion that I didn't. It happened to be someone's birthday party, and I overdid it on cake because I was feeling sorry for myself. And so this data shows me all these things. And then we get to push on what we call the pain point, right? We get to push on the pain point is that whole self-empathy piece. So we get to, it's not about you not being able to hit a macro. It's not about you being able to get your movement goal in. When you are psychologically pressed, the rest of that crap doesn't matter. Right? When your thoughts are overtaking you, you're not saying, man, when you're not your best self, you're not saying, I really need to get to the gym today. When you're psychologically broken down, you're thinking, I'm the worst. I'm the worst. I'm the worst. So we look at that and we set up conditional parameters around it. So we contextualize the problem and we work on that self-talk. We work on, I don't use the word diet in our program because of the connotation that has with people. We use the concept known as reverse dieting. Or we call it metabolic optimization. So just changing the words changes the history that someone has attached to that word. So when I use the word diet, it usually, or scale, that usually makes people have like a fear response of some sort, right? Because they have this terrible history with it. But if I use the word lifestyle update instead of lifestyle change, just a small thing. Oh, okay. Well, we're updating, right? I'm not overhauling myself and I have to start from scratch. I'm just tweaking some stuff. It doesn't feel so scary. So then behaviorally speaking, that gives me a little bit of motivation because you have to start with that to take that step out. And then when I take that step and keep going here, eventually that motivation is going to run out. And by that time, we've done small enough steps to where we understand that we don't need the motivation because we've changed our mindset.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Again, lines up a lot with some of the work I do. And one question I have for you though there, too, I have a bunch of questions that came out of that actually. What the one I want to ask is, do you incorporate any kind of breath work into that concept you're talking about?
No, that's not something that we are well versed in yet. I've been doing a few things. Like I listen to the Key Nutrition podcast a lot, and Brad Jensen and his sister, they always talk about like the Wim Hof method and their work with breath work. And surely I do I'm cognizant of breath when I'm, doing I do for myself, I do what I call my morning affirmation. And so I've taken my 2 values and then put them into action. And in the middle of that, I have an environment set up for it. So there's a specific song that I listen to that, gets me in the right mind frame. My lighting is low, and right above that computer, before I start any work during the day, right above that computer is a picture that just says, today I will be authentic, today I will be vulnerable, and today I will be helpful. And so as that song is playing, I'm kind of going through the thought process for myself that what signifies to Clint that a day is complete because things happen that you can't account for is if I can, in any situation, be vulnerable and authentic, and in that way be helpful. So it's to me, the missing piece is always like, why I'm living my values. Yeah, you're living in your values, but how are you projecting them out? Right? What's the action place? We have the why. What's the how and the what? What are you going to do with it? So my thing for myself is if I can live out those 2 values to help someone at least once or twice a day, no matter what happens. If today was a crap day to everybody else, if I've done those things and put them forward, I've been a better person today. Yeah. So that 1% better every day. That's what we're looking for. And so no, the breath work from a formal standpoint, no, not yet. That might be something.
Formal is kind of questionable. There isn't, even something like Wim Hof is I don't know if we'd even call that formal, but no, from my perspective, I just feel like, understanding the neurophysiology, all the different concepts of those moments, I wonder how much more impactful it can be if in that moment when you're saying, hey, I'm feeling a little stressed out, being more aware, that mindset piece, saying, take that deep breath in, and just do this, whatever, box breathing, or 4 seconds in, 7-second hold, 8 seconds out, whatever that is. There's so many different forms of that breathing, or just, put a hand on your chest, put a hand on your belly, take a big breath in. I want everyone to do that listening right now. Do it right now. Feel there you go. And I can see through the video, Clint's breathing in all up in his chest. I'm sorry if I'm making you nervous, but that's that fight or flight up here in the chest, right? And then just being aware of that, being able to breathe into the belly, as I'm doing now, looking pregnant. I can't even get that on camera, but looking pregnant. and it does literally massage your vagus nerve, which connects back to the brain, all these physiological changes. Calms it all down, takes us from fight or flight up here in the shoulders, neck area, down to rest and digest, and takes us from, you mentioned the example of, the person at work who got the raise or the promotion that I didn't, that I wanted, and taking that stress, kind of using that energy, so to speak, without necessarily a formal pattern. But I just think the power of breath is super big, and it's something that, again, it's hard to make it really formal.
You're right.
And so but I do think there's a place for that. And again, I'm just excited talking through some of these concepts and seeing if and how we can better implement that stuff. I end up, it's the first thing I ever assess on anyone I work with, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, and it's 97% of the time, they don't know how to breathe. So,
I like that approach.
Yeah. So, and the only people who do know how to breathe are performers. If they're on Broadway or they're singers and they know how to engage their diaphragm and things like that, or they've kind of gone through and found a clinician, like me, who really cares about breathing. But it really is, for me, like when we're talking about your back pain, hey, maybe if you breathe into your back, like you're going to stretch out you're using your stomach stretches out your low back. So crazy how that might start fixing things. And then, you have neck pain. Maybe it's because you take 23,000 breaths a day where you're
up here.
Up here. Yeah. So anyway,
you're right in the fact that everything's connected, right? And so it all goes to that CNS and that parasympathetic approach and that response and the fight or flight thing. And the one thing that I do that's similar to, I mean, it's for your, for your 3 miles under the sea, my little kiddie pool is around those moments when the person at work, I tell them to be cognizant of their shoulder placement. And so for me, the 3 things and again, there's not really any formal thing, but I just always notice this connected, that my traps are tight when I'm stressed. So I carry them there. So therefore it pulls back, retracts my scapula, pulls it up, and my shoulders end up looking like this. I'm up here. So then I go ahead and say, hey, why don't we take a deep breath real quick and release to your natural position? So then we let the shoulders fall. And then I say, notice how far they fall. It's usually about 3-4 inches. And then, okay, so now you're in your typical, posture. instead of pulling at them with your traps and sterno and all that stuff, making them tight, which gets you the jaw pain, which gives you back to the vagus nerve, which gets you connected to your body, mind muscle connection, however you like, it all plays together. But that's what that's one little trick that I use with most everybody too, is it's not necessarily breath work, but it's indication. So it's a specific behavioral indicator in a specific moment that we can understand. So when we're able to contextualize behavior, then we're able to better understand it and then behaviorally replace it.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's
I love it.
That's it.
I love that reframe on that. That's great. Another question that came up from you from the last kind of thing we were talking about here is you mentioned the scale can be a little triggering for people. Do you have a general approach for, again, someone comes to you, they want to lose 30 pounds. Are you like, for me, again, working with folks who want to lose weight and that kind of concept, I say, I don't actually want you to weigh yourself for at least the next 30 days. The next 30 days is focused on whatever X change of behavior we're really trying to focus on that. So I don't want you to go down that path. So do you have any rules at all? I'm just again, curious. Love to hear your take on that, the how often and in what cases.
So here's the cool part, that where it becomes individualized and how like the science of behavior allows us to dictate that. And so a general person comes to me and I'll ask the question, so how often are you weighing in? And a lot of the time I'll get north of 3 times a week. A lot of people that seek us out are daily weighers. And so I obviously want to move from daily weight to no weigh at all, especially when that's causing what we call it's a motivating operation, meaning the scale has a psychological attachment. And so regardless if I step on it or not, when I see it, I'm already feeling a certain way, right? So, if we can put it in the closet for 30 days and not do it and focus on the behaviors and habits, fantastic. The reality is a lot of people aren't there yet. So we have to systemize it. So what we end up doing is saying, okay, we're doing 5 days a week. This next week, we're going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday instead of Monday through Friday, right? But it's not enough to just do that. We have to do something else. So we're going to do that. And then what I want you to do is go into your closet and pick a shirt that doesn't quite fit, but almost does, that you want to get into. And every day you weigh in, I want you to put that shirt on. And so we're going to do that. And then we're going to go ahead and start putting that shirt on and looking at it every day. Let's say we do that for a couple of weeks, and then we'll say, okay, we're going to weigh in twice a week. We're going to weigh in once a week. All those other days that we're not weighing in, we're still going to put the shirt on and look in the mirror. So we're systematically fading down the amount of time we're weighing. And if the program, if we're sticking to the program and people are following through and it's not too difficult for them to do at that moment, we should be seeing results. Sometimes we'll do it with photos as well, where you take a photo of yourself in the shirt daily and go back and look at it. Shapes is a really cool app that does that for you. And it'll take the date and it'll give you like the bodybuilder profile, the side, the back, and the front. Now you're not doing like double unders or anything with your biceps primarily, but it gives you like a little ghost avatar for you to stand in the same spot each time. So if you're taking it daily, you can see these little changes over the week. So that's the object lesson. So we connect the change to something different. So we're unpairing and repairing to something different, a different stimulus. And then over time, so that might take us a month. It might take longer. It might take a couple of days. It depends on the person. Let's say I finally gotten them to, okay, so we're weighing in on Mondays because we're meeting on Mondays, and we're going to weigh in after we've voided our bowels and our everything else. And we're going to weigh in, right after we wake up. And then now we're going to work on it as a data point. So as we're going through and unpairing, we're teaching what fluctuations look like, and we're learning the person. Is the person sensitive to carbohydrates? Are they sensitive to sodium? Everybody is, but are they particularly sensitive to, like, I did great over the week, and on the weekend I had, we had 3,000 grams of sodium, and how did I gain 5 pounds in the last week? Well, you didn't. You're holding on to probably 3 pounds of water from yesterday. And so let's up our water intake today and move forward and not worry about it. That's our data point. Our data point is showing us that we're sensitive to sodium. So therefore we can use that as information and we can adjust. So all this time we're undoing years of problematic learning history and at the same time getting rid of the scale. Now we might lose it altogether and just say, okay, now that we've gotten to a place where the data is showing weight loss is happening, you're reporting that you're happy, because when we start every session, we don't even jump in until we do what's called a non-scale win. And so we start off every session setting the environment with like, what's a win in your life that has nothing to do with what we're doing? Going on vacation this week, I spent time. Awesome. That's great. Now, how does that lead into what we're doing? How does what we're doing support that win versus this is everything? Because it's just a part of life. So we unpair it, and then we're able to throw the scale in the closet. So I say, okay, now I think we're ready. The data shows that we're ready. My connection with you says we're ready. Let's put the scale away and focus on increasing our movement, getting more sleep, hitting that water intake, and then get those macros. Let's do that for 3 weeks. We might even say, let's just do it for 5 days. Cool, you did it. Look at that change. Look at the shirt. Look at you. Let's do it for another week. Okay, now that we're in the second week, go ahead and buy those body calipers I told you about. So instead of working on weight, we're going to work on body fat percentage loss, because what's going to happen if we're training correctly, we're going to do a recomposition. We're going to lose weight, but it's going to be fat and not muscle, which is a whole nother topic for a podcast, I'm sure. So that's a long form answer, but I felt like it was important.
Absolutely, yeah, and we're in a long form format, so we're not going to do the 4-hour Joe Rogan version, but
no,
if you really want to,
unless you have that kind of sponsorship,
and let's all start smoking the weed. But yeah, we're not doing that right now. But yeah, man, I do appreciate you sharing all that. I do want to be respectful of your time as well, unless there's any other specific things you want to cover. Otherwise, I'd love to wrap it up.
Sure, I don't know, just love the opportunity. It's really cool to get to connect with awesome people like yourself. I feel a cross episode coming on. Awesome. So we'll have to talk about you coming onto ours to dive into your stuff as well with our audience.
How often are you guys posting on
podcast wise?
Yes,
we do weekly right now. We've had some my co-host had some personal stuff going, so the last weeks we've been on a hiatus, but we're gonna hit the ground running again this next week. So we shoot for weekly and then weekly release on Wednesdays. We're a 2-man show. Like I do all the editing, all the recording, all that. Like we don't have we're saving money to put back into our process. By doing everything ourselves, just because we care enough about we could expedite it, but we want to help people better. So we want that money to go towards our stuff. We use an app. We use really cool data stuff. We're trying to do it legit and tell people that there's something better than just 12 weeks of pure grueling agony to look a pant size better.
And those I'll do a little plug for a new podcast I'm starting outside of this one called the Demand Better podcast with my buddy Corona, unfortunate name, in New York City, personal trainer.
Cool.
But David Corona. It means king. He had the name first.
Absolutely.
But Demand Better. We just launched our first episode, Demand Better from your personal trainer, which is an area him and I both have a lot of experience with. But I think there's a lot to be said of demanding better from nutritionists, from dietitians, from the entire space of Arbonne and the multi-level marketing schemes and all this stuff, and understanding where. And I don't know if you want to chime in. If that's going to set us down another hour long, which is fine.
I will. Why if it's all right with you and talk to King, Mr. Corona, let's. I would love if you'd have me. I'd love to go ahead and talk about that topic on the show that's appropriate for it. Because I have lots of thoughts on that specific to the term nutritionist.
Right. And a lot of people come to me and ask me those questions. And again, I actually only really got the precision nutrition certification to have, some kind of letters behind my name, but I've been working in and around that nutrition space for so long. And being able to have a little more format, but also have a little bit of protection legally just by having that and all that fun stuff. So, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But yes, people tend to want to go to nutritionist, dietitian, these terms. And it's easy to go to those big promises of, hey, we'll help you lose 6 pounds in 6 days. It's like, oh, okay. So we won't go down all the rabbit holes of all the kind of BS, so to speak, right there and then. But
we could do a red flag episode for your
and that's kind of what we're trying to create and structure that a concept as. Again, with the personal training is literally that we had our top 5 list of things to look out for.
Cool.
For that, it's if somebody has a 6-pack, like you kind of said the same thing about, does that mean that they should go and why didn't I get a 6-pack? Oh, J-Lo got a 6-pack, but you don't have J-Lo's abs, you don't have J-Lo's resources. You don't have her genetics, so it's not likely you're going to have the same results. So it's coming down to
J-Lo's
that.
got people.
She's got people. So even if you have some people, make sure they're better people than the $60 an hour, personal trainer. No offense to that, but we go deep into that.
No. Yeah.
Check that episode out for those listening. And before we wrap up, I'd love to, and hopefully we can link up for something like that episode. But tell people where they can find you, work with you guys, and definitely get on board with these messages you're putting out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We are on Instagram and Facebook at Behavior Chef. We have any platform you listen to. We are the Behavior Chef podcast. And if you are just interested to just connect with us, if you go to behaviorchef.com/connect, there is a landing page there for you to fill out something, and we'll reach out to you and schedule we call them connection calls. They're not discovery calls. They're not, onboarding calls. It's literally a call for you to connect with us. And then regardless if you work with us or not, you're going to leave that call with something to do. Because all we want to do at the end of the day is be helpful to you. Our little tagline is your values, your journey, healthful change, because you deserve your health. That's our whole thing. So yeah, you can find us everywhere at Behavior Chef.
Yeah, one part I kind of wrote down, we didn't quite get to. I do want to wrap it up though. Was long-term health. You guys, I know I've heard you talk about that on your podcast, and I'd encourage folks, if they're interested in long-term health, it's something I'm very passionate about. I have my new Bo 30 system. So 30 minutes, I can help you move better, get out of pain. We're going to put a plan in place for the next 30 days. And then we want that to turn into the next 30 years. So something sustainable and that long-term health, like we were talking about. So by putting all these little steps together, that graphic that you kind of sent that I showed earlier, build those habits, build that staircase, make your way there. So with that said, we're going to check out with habits here, if y'all can hear that. And you can stay on. We'll wrap it up, and everyone check out Behavior Chef podcast on Instagram and as well as the podcast. So talk to you guys soon. Thanks again for being on, Clint, and
thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you soon.